Hey, what's up that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today? Very excited to be back with you. Another episode with my friend, Jerome Maldonado. What's up, brother? How are you?
Sure, bro. Good to be here,
Man, I'm so excited to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
We connected in happenstance, for lack of a better way to phrase it, where we just connect and everyone at the event is going and doing their thing. And for like 2 hours, we're just like walking around having a conversation. It was like kindred spirits in some kind of weird way. So I'm really excited to have you on this show and get to introduce you to the audience here. Um, what's something that I need to know about your past to understand who you are today?
I think a lot of who I'm built on comes from a little bit of pain that I suffered as a kid, not from my parents. My story is a lot different than yours and some other people's, but I think a lot of people can relate to this. I was dyslexic as a kid and didn't know until I was in college, but in first grade, I had reading issues and I went to a private school and I was ridiculed because of it, not by kids, but by teachers. And I was held back by it. And I always had this inferiority complex about myself from the time I was in first grade. And I saw the principal, the teacher who was a nun, and my mom negotiating what grade I was going to go to in second grade or stay in first grade. And from that point forward, I always felt like I had something to prove in order to get to the next level in anything I did in life. And but I had one thing that helped me through that, and it was a strong mom that kept my confidence up. But I always felt like, you know, it was a private school setting called special education, but in terms of no other better word, it was a special education program where I was pulled out of class every day, my whole life, all the way till eighth grade, to go read with less than average kids. And so one of the big things is I could have depicted my life in that regards, and it's for a certain amount of time I did. And
Then you were lesser.
yeah, that I felt like less of a person, inadequate to my peers, because I couldn't read as fast as them. It actually put me in a position where at a young age, I became a little bit more aggressive because I'd rather throw a spitwad in class or do something that would get me in trouble or get put in the corner, as opposed to read in front of a group, because the other kids would shout out the words that I couldn't read fast enough, and it made me feel inferior to them. And the teachers didn't help because, you think you're in this private Catholic school, looking back, that they would help you, right? And it wasn't like that all the way through school. There was a few good teachers that are memorable, but the vast majority of them just didn't want you as a problem. So they would dismiss you as opposed to helping you. And so I think that's an important piece of my life that I don't really talk about to a lot of people, but it really sculpted me to who I am today. And it was a negative, what I felt was a negative attribute as a child, which actually has become a positive attribute in who I am today. And, I think I still carry some of that with me.
Yeah.
And I think as adults, there's a lot of adults that carry that with them. I know, because even with as much success as I've had, there's moments in my life. And when I say there's moments, because now as I've grown, it's easier for me to overcome it by telling myself that none of the inadequacies really add up to who I really am, but yet they still live deep within me. And there's moments in time where I feel that inferiority that I felt as a kid today at almost 50 years old.
Yeah. And so when you're in that, and as a kid, and you mentioned like you even feel some ramifications now heading at 50 years old, it's like, how do you navigate the world when there's this thing that you have no control over that actually is controlling everything around you? Like you talked about violent outbursts, you talked about being, getting in trouble so you don't have to read. How'd that play out? Like when you're in your teens and in your 20s and 30s, like what role did those experiences play in your adult life?
I think if it would have went from there to my 30s, it would have been catastrophic. There's a few people. There was a woman by the name of Miss McCullough, and she wouldn't even know this. I don't think I would wish that at some point in time I'd be able to find her. I don't know her first name. I never have, because she was just Miss McCullough, right? But her impact on my life was strong because she believed in me. My mom was a huge impact in my life because she never gave up on me and she believed in me when I needed her. In 7th grade, I actually got kicked out of the private school I was in, and my mom went to every single private school in town, and nobody wanted me. And my mom wanted me to go to a private high school. They didn't have a wrestling team, and this one nun at our school called Holy Ghost took me in, and she embraced me, and she sat me down, and her name was Sister Ada, and she sat and said, Jerome, I want to know what happened in a nutshell, basically. And then I kind of gave her a rundown. And she goes, I believe you're a good kid because I believe that no kid is bad, right? And she goes, and I want you to work with me. And I even get a little emotional with some of that stuff because it's people like that at the right time that have belief in you that make milestones of changes in life, which I'm sure you've had in your life at the right times. And it was her that day sitting there with me and her just looking at me saying, I believe in you, that changed where I was going. I was in trouble in 7th grade to going into 8th grade. I didn't want to disappoint. And so I think God put her specifically in my life at that moment to change my direction. And because I could have went down a really bad road because I was fighting and I was real aggressive. And most of it was because I felt very inadequate in what I was doing, because everybody made me feel that way. And I was just a kid and I didn't know, I didn't know at that time. I felt like I was to blame for everything, that everything that went wrong. And when I look at it now, like at my kids, when I became father, I wanted to make sure my kids never felt like that. And so that was a real important piece for me, being a dad. And it was like those people that were put in my life that made catastrophic changes for me. It could have been a catastrophic change, but made really positive impacts on me in such a major way that really shifted my life. Me not wanting to let her down shifted who I was. I worked hard at being the best Jerome could be my 8th grade year because I was still a dumb kid.
Sure.
With dumb tendencies, but a good kid, My intentions weren't ill and bad. I just was placed to that. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be in trouble for everything I do. I might as well do some stuff that I shouldn't be doing, right? And you think like that as a kid, And so that she was put in my life. And then that led me into high school. And it was sports and athletics that kept me driving in that direction. And so my coaches, the people that were coaching me, not letting them down, my peers that believed in me, my goals. I started having goals. So I felt like when I went to a public high school in 9th grade, I was like, I wasn't the dumb kid anymore. I was like the kid that was like above average at that point in time. And I didn't know that because I never felt that feeling before. So that little win in my life in 9th grade was huge for me because I was like, damn, I'm not the dumb kid in class anymore. I'm like, I can par up with these people.
That's so powerful, man. I think one of the things that's really difficult when you come through those experiences, because that's traumatic. I mean, obviously you're emotional about it. Like it carries weight with you even into adulthood, which is what I'm always trying to explain to my clients. I'm like, just because you're here doesn't mean this is over.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but it's like, if you're willing, I believe this, and this has been probably one of the hardest things I've learned personally. If you're willing to just allow the space to trust people, most of the time they're not going to let you down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe in that. I think that most people genuinely are good.
I agree.
I've met more good people.
Instagram won't tell you that
though. No, social media won't tell you that though. They condemn me for the smallest things, and then there's a lot of haters out there, and I think that those haters are really they're bleeding internally in their own problems and traumatic issues that they have in their lives, and like that stuff made me stronger. People go through this stuff, and their solution to their pain is having other people feel pain. One of the biggest things that I think I've learned over the course of time is when I get people around me that are doing well, and I ran my businesses like this, I'm hard on them. I'm hard on people, and I'm very critical of them. And part of that is because I'm so hard on myself because of what I went through, I think, that I'm hard on people so much so that sometimes it breaks them before it lifts them up. And I try to make it a point to not be so critical on them that it breaks them before it lifts them up.
In my mind, here's what I relegated it to, very simply put. There's a statement that I make to myself that life is gonna life. And it's just my way of just being like, man, people are gonna suck sometimes.
Yeah.
But we get so caught up because I guarantee it, you've had employees, and someone who's ran teams for my entire adult life, you've had employees that you pushed that didn't realize like you're pushing them because you see potential, and they hate you.
They resent you for it. Yeah. 100%. And like, if you don't have ill intentions, it's all out of good in your art, but you're right. I think sometimes a lot of people do, because I think they have a lot of pain that they went through in their life. And to your point, I have a saying that it's not right, it's not wrong, it just is. One of my mentors taught me that. They go, look, Bill, one of my mentors early on, he said, Jerome, there's things in life. He goes, you're going to be, you want to be right, or you want to be rich? I'd rather be wrong and rich than right and broke. And he goes, some things in life aren't right, they're not wrong, they just are. That accept them for what they are. And when you take on life in that under those circumstances, you realize that sometimes people just want to be right. Just let them be right. And sometimes them being right makes them feel more righteous in their own good. It doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't make you less of who you are. It just allows them to ante up to what makes them feel better about themselves, And so that's helped me a lot in business. It's helped me a lot even on a personal basis, and in accepting, where you are in things. It's helped me out in business negotiations and lawsuits and everything else that comes along with business. Is just understanding that. And I can even tell my wife this, and it's helped us out even raising our kids, because there's been times where there's been parents or coaches or other influences in our kids' lives where we feel like what was happening to our kids in that moment should be happening to our kids in that moment, and you get like angry because you're a protective parent, right? And I have to sometimes tell my wife, I say, hey, look, I said, they don't even know what they're doing. Like they're not doing it deliberately, like they're not trying to hurt our kids, but they're hurting our kids. So we as parents have to make conscious decisions to get our kids out of a compromising situation and a toxic situation, and migrate them out of it. Because it's not that they're right and we're wrong, or vice versa. That circumstance just is as it sits, and it's how we handle that circumstance that actually is going to depict what the outcome is. And that's life. Like that's everybody's life that's watching. That's your life. Like what you did to turn your life around, that's how you did it. And that's how I did it. And because the situation that I was in, as bad as I make it sound, I had a really good childhood. Sure. But that was just something that really impacted my childhood. And did the teachers think they were doing wrong at that time? No. But did they know they were affecting me in such a negative way that they were? No. So was it right? In my eyes, it wasn't. But in their eyes, they were not wrong. It just was the circumstances that I was brought up in, and I had to figure out how to deal with that.
One of the things that comes to mind as you're saying that is like the ego has a need to be right.
Yep.
Right? Yep. But the ego also has a need to be offended.
Yep.
And so you're constantly in this throw of the back and forth of you're right or I'm right, or you're wrong or I'm wrong. This concept I have of life is gonna life. Like you could do the worst thing in the world to me, and the thing that I'm gonna take from it is like, whatever, it's life.
Yeah.
And in that's not to be dismissive. It's not that I don't get hurt. It's not like if when I left my last relationship, I was crippled by it. Like it totally sucked, right? Jerome, this, man. They're so trapped. They're so trapped in the thing that happened in third grade.
Yeah.
Because this is what I think people come to a lot, is they're like, why is it that, talking about myself, they'll look at me and go, how did he figure out? Right?
You said it just a second ago. I mean, there's multiple reasons, right? There's more than just this, but there's like one of the things that you just said that you do is really one of the tactical ways of how you overcome it. And you don't look at how it's affecting your day. Like if somebody tells me something negative today about me, I'm like, how's that really going to affect my life tomorrow? Like it really doesn't, right? And I look at the future, and I ask myself those questions sometimes. I look at it and go, okay, who is this person? How have they affected my life in a positive, negative way in the past? How have they affected me in a negative or positive way today? and will what they're doing and telling me today, is it going to affect my life tomorrow? And if it doesn't, if they haven't affected me and they're not affecting me and they're not going to affect my life in a positive way, why should I allow them into my life to affect me today? If none of that adds up to me moving forward in life, I disregard it 100%.
Do you think that's like your superpower then?
I think I'm blessed that I have that. And I do. When I pray sometimes, I'll say, like, God, thank you. And by the grace of God, go I, because I feel sometimes that I'm lucky that I have something, because I know it's easier said than done. It's taken a lot of work. And my wife's been telling me that, because there's a lot of mental illness that runs in my family line like that. And I think that, and she goes, I think that you're okay with who you are because of all the self-development that you've done since I was 18 years old in entrepreneurship. Because I've been doing it for 30 years. And I sometimes ask myself if I'd be a different person if I wouldn't have gotten into this entrepreneurial journey at such a young age and into personal development at such a young age.
For sure.
And probably 100% for sure, because I've been working on my personal development for 30 years.
Dude, here's what I always tell people. I'm like, do you really want to find out who you are? Be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure.
And like, it's funny because sometimes people will push back on me. I'm like, I thought your show was about mental health. I'm like, yeah, that's the entire game of entrepreneurship. It's all mental health.
Forever.
And then you're like in this forever. But I think that one of the really interesting parts about the personal development journey is as you grow, you watch everything around you grow.
Yeah.
And you got into it very young, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. Like you had a child. I'm going to call him a child because he's still 17. And when you're 17, you're a child. I don't care what you say, you're stupid.
You are stupid.
But you had a kid. I was speaking at your mastermind, and you have all these incredible entrepreneurs in there, paid a ton of money to be with you. And there's this kid, 17 in the room. And bro, my first thought, I was like, bro, if I was in that room when I was 17, I'd be a freaking billionaire right now. And so my hope is, like, here's what's interesting. Children are so open to receiving.
Yeah, they are.
Even at that age, at 18, 19, 20. And we have adults. I know the average person listening to this show is like 40 years old, right? I'm heading into my 40s. I'm getting there. I've been on a personal development journey for 13 years. And it's like, even still, man, I'm like bashing my head against the wall because I'm like, you don't get this still? Like, what? We're missing the boat here. What do you think people need to do to really take advantage of personal development?
They need to get rid of the negative people in their life. And this is the hardest part for people. It was hard for me. I still battle with this sometimes. Like I talk about how good and how my mom was to me growing up and how she was my backbone. But then as I was an adult, my mom and dad also became my crutch. And my mom and dad, I'm lucky to have my parents in their mid-70s still healthy, and I love them to death. And God bless their hearts. But there's people in your life you have to rid of, either long-term or temporarily, or certain aspects to get to where you need to get, and you need to make sure that you're not selfish when you're doing it. And because
hold on, let's go into that. How do you not be selfish while you do it?
No, I'm sorry. You need to be selfish.
You need to be, okay, yeah. I thought that might be where you were going, because I was like, how do we navigate that?
Yeah. So when you're going through this, you have to be selfish. This time right now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for you to be greedy and selfish, because I was always taught that a drowning person can't save another drowning person. And so if you're out in the middle of the ocean struggling to stay alive, you can't help nobody. You got to help yourself first. You got to get on dry land. And so if you're being affected emotionally by people that are around you, and you know what's hard is the biggest thing is it's the people you love. It is your parents a lot of times. So one thing that I was blessed with was I was just a single man, no kids, taking on this journey. But one thing I was very adamant about when I met my wife was the direction I was going. And she, so much so that as we grew together, she became a little bit bitter at a certain point in time in our relationship, because all relationships go through ups and downs. And as close as my wife and I feel that my wife and I are now, we've traveled a roller coaster journey over the course of the last 25 years that her and I have been together, and the last 16, almost 17 years that we've been married. And part of that was there was times where she was young, and I just told her the direction my life was going to go, and it was non-negotiable. And I wasn't willing to give that up. That and working out. My 1 hour workout, 4 days, and those are two things I told her, like, those are non-negotiable in my life. Like, if I have to negotiate those, I feel like I'm less of a man. And those are two factors in my life that I'm not willing to negotiate with. And there was a certain point in time where we had kids, and she started losing her sense of identity because she gave up her professional career to be a mom, which was I just respect and love her for so much, but it was hard for her. And we had to ride through some of this stuff. And I never gave up and compromised my goals. And she was bitter about it at certain points in time, but we worked through it together. And so she supports me. I've never given a reason not to, but we have to understand that those relationships are real, and those people affect your life. So when you're in your infant stages of change and growth and development, you need to be around people that truly support you and help you grow.
Those relationships with the people of our lives are very difficult to navigate when you are driven. And we're so tied to this idea that when we're changing, it's not okay to leave people behind. And I think it's the most important thing we can do.
Like, I got a good friend of mine that I hold close to my heart. And I don't hang out with him on a regular basis. I'll see him maybe once a year. And when we get together, we laugh, man. We tell stories, and it's a good time. But I know that I can't hang out with him every day, because the lifestyle that he lives and the lifestyle that I live are entirely different. There'll either be some level of resentment that he has towards me because maybe he might feel inferior to what I've been able to accomplish because he's looking at it on a monetary and a financial basis. But people get resentful of that. And in the opposite, he drinks a lot, and it doesn't really fit my lifestyle, right? And as much as I love him, I just don't want to be around the alcohol, and it just doesn't fit the direction that I want my kids to see. It doesn't fit the direction and the example of that portion of being a father that I want to depict on my kids. And I just don't want that to be a depiction on my life as well, because that you slowly start succumbing your life to the people you're around. So if I'm around him more regularly, I probably will end up drinking.
So I have a question that I feel like is going to help a lot of people.
Sure.
You grew up having some resentment about dyslexia, being mad at people, obviously facing some confidence issues, having a teacher come into your life who plays this really important role, feeling like you want to prove it to not only them, but to you. And then you find this path of success. What I'm wondering about in that, because this is where what I think is so incredible about your journey, is success isn't, you just said it, it's not money. It's not money. What is success like meeting you today?
Oh, bro, you're gonna make me cry. Yeah, success to me has everything to do with everything. I mean, money makes your life easier, but success to me is about family and my faith. Who you are as a person in all aspects. Success to me is how my wife thinks of me. My family, for sure, over everything, is success to me. But success also falls in with yourself, right? Because, like, I know that I can't be the father that I want to be, the boss I want to be, the husband I want to be, if first I'm not happy with me. And so there's like levels to this, because success is like, okay, how well have you taken care of yourself? Like, are you watching your weight? Are you watching like what you eat? Are you watching what you put in your body? Do you smoke? Do you drink? How are you treating yourself? Are you not sleepy? Success to me is like, okay, it starts here at this core that I live in, called my body. And then you were talking about the spirit earlier. And it was funny because the sermon this Sunday was about thanking God for, not for the stuff in life, but our spirits that we live in. And if I'm a successful person in every way that I can be, then I can be a better husband. I can be a better dad. I can be a better boss. I can be better to business partners. I can be better in every aspect of my life. So that to me is true success.
What are your thoughts about when you hear people say things along the lines of, well, that's for you, that's for them, I'm never going to have it, I don't deserve it, it's impossible, look where I came from? What are your thoughts about that?
They need to change their mindset. They need to shift it. I'll tell this story because I think this has to do with exactly what you're talking about. I remember studying in college, and I was sitting at a little cafe diner, and it's a stupid little cafe diner that the food items aren't expensive. I remember being so broke, and my parents didn't give us money. You know, they didn't. They gave us an education. Their philosophy was, we give you a platform, then you go from there. They didn't buy us cars. They didn't do that stuff. They expected us to go out and do. And I remember being in this cafe diner. My cousin and I, we're both great. My mom comes from a really big family of 11 kids, and our moms were sisters, and they grew up in the same fashion, you know. And you go back to yourself. And I remember looking up at the menu board, and I remember looking up thinking, I would tell my cousin, bro, one day we'll be able to afford anything on that menu. And it was a little diner, and everything was like 89-cent burritos and $2.50 plates, $5 plates, and we couldn't afford it, you know. And we, you know, you come from that, and you build towards something bigger. God made us all equal, but yet I'm being told by my parents that they're like the better things in life that I think, like the better foods, the better trout, aren't for people like us. It's for people like them. And yet they're resentful to those same people. Why? And so I wanted to prove to myself that if we were truly born equal, why is it that I can't have the better things in life? Why can't I go have a Wagyu steak or a sushi dinner or whatever it was at that point? Why was that for the white man that I was taught that? I feel like I was born equal. If I was truly born equal, then I should be able to get it. That drove me.
Yeah.
You know, we're so hard on ourselves. We hinder our own ability to succeed time and time again. And one of the big things is when you expose somebody to entrepreneurship or self-healing, they have to admit that there's something wrong with them. Yeah. And most people aren't willing to admit that there's something wrong with them. And that's a big problem because they're in denial. It's just like an addict or anybody else. So much so that I remember when I was 21 years old, I was living in Virginia. One of my closest friends I was trying to get him to go in the same direction I was. And his mom called me and said, stop. She literally called me in my office in Virginia. And she goes, Jerome, you need to stop giving my son those books. And I said, what books? It was Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Insane.
In his book. And I go, are you kidding me? I'm not feeding your son drugs. I'm giving him success books to make him better. Well, do you know that it's okay for them to have normal jobs? Like what you're doing isn't for everybody. And I said, I get that, but I'm trying to make him, you know, he's my best friend. I'm trying to make him better. And she was resentful to me for trying to make her son better because she wanted to make sure that her son understood that it was okay to be average. It was okay to be normal, that there was nothing wrong with him, that my direction was the wrong direction and that her direction was the right direction as a mom. And most people are not willing to admit the fact that there's a portion of them that's broken from their upbringing and they're in denial.
Yeah. And that's a hard truth because, you know, you hear that and I think to myself, she probably would have preferred you were giving him drugs because I think the most dangerous thing someone can have is an open mind to possibility.
Yeah, I think so. Because then they open a door for failure.
That's right. And that's so scary.
Yeah, it's scary.
Dude, I mean, I'm telling you know what's funny, man? I was thinking about this. I always get nervous before I speak. You know, it doesn't matter. I've spoken in front of 10,000 people. I've spoken in front of 2. I text you before I came to speak at your mastermind. I'm like, I'm in the hallway, like gathering my thoughts because I get super nervous, right? Yeah. You would never know. Like people see me up there and they're like, this dude's a natural, whatever. But what they don't see is like, I put this idea in my head, like one day I can do this. Yeah. And I just started doing, but the failures were massive in the beginning. Yeah. Massive. And I was just like, okay, cool. I'm going to learn from this. Oh, I made a mistake there. Okay, cool. When I said this, maybe I should have did that because that's where I get the laugh. And my hope is that people will just start building on the failures because I think failure is a great foundation. Yeah. Because you're only going up from there.
Yeah. Well, and I did that. I spoke in front of a group one time and I talked about that. I said, let me ask you guys a question. If I put up a thought right now, and you could try anything in life and nobody around you knew and you could see anything that you were doing and you had the endless ability to fail and fail and fail and fail and nobody was going to judge you, would you try more? Would you do more? Would you go after things more knowing that you weren't going to be condemned? Because it isn't their fear of failing that is the true fear. It's the fear of judgment that is the true fear.
The hardest part about what you just said is everyone is always going to say yes to that question.
Yeah.
And 2% of people will ever actually take the step.
And that's why there's the stats. And I'd say, that's what they say, 3% of the 3% of the population controls 95% of the wealth in the world. And the other 5% is shared by 97% of the population. And it's because of that statistic right there.
Before I ask you my last question, where can everyone find you?
Jerome Maldonado. You can find me on every social media platform under Jerome Maldonado. On IG, it's the Jerome Maldonado, but I'm real easy to find. You can Google me online, and my websites are Jerome Maldonado. We'll have that in the cliff notes.
My last question for you, my friend. What does it mean to you to be unbroken?
Oh, I was thinking about that when you asked Cole a second ago, and I didn't want this question. I wanted it to be more organic, so I kind of just exited it out of my mind. Unbroken has to do with your life spirit to me. Like when you can't be broken down by life circumstances, because I think at moments we all feel broken down. We have moments that we all feel a little beat up. We're tired or hungry or whatever it is. Life just has a way to beat us up. Being unbroken is when you have all your pieces in life put together. And for me, my kids, my family, business, my faith, my health, everything's in alignment. But it's not just when that stuff's in alignment. It's when things go bad, when you have so much control of your life that nobody and no life circumstance can break you down and subject you to anything more than what you are right now. And so to me, being unbroken is having the innate ability to be strong enough to have a direction that follows your true life of where you ultimately want to be. And for me, it just has to do really with family and freedom.
Really said, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. And remember that when you do, you're helping other people transform trauma to triumph, breakdowns to breakthroughs, and others just like you to become the hero of their own story.